Let's try this again. How you doing? Oh my goodness. You'd think I'd learn to turn on my microphone just at least once, right? Nah. Well, hopefully this day's treating you well. I know for myself, I am doing okay. Um, every day's a new adventure, isn't it? Especially in the life of caregiving. I was coming across some videos. I was looking at different content creators and try to figuring out, where did it start for me? Not the caregiving journey, but just the support that I was getting. Back in the day, I say in the last 5 years or so, I started to discover different platforms other than YouTube or Twitter, different applications. And I came across this one site, I want to say it was about 5, maybe 6 years ago, called Twitch. And this Twitch, I learned, was basically an app, a site for gamers. But in the process of doing this, I was following somebody that used Twitch quite a bit, and that's the reason why I ended up on Twitch. And I saw not only are there a lot of gamers on there, um, which I don't understand, that's a whole different world. But there were people that were doing content on this app primarily for gamers, and they did like music. And I noticed they were earning money, and people were sending them tips, and they were doing everything from music to ASMR, which I didn't even know existed. Where they're doing sounds. There was some weird stuff on Twitch. It's a different type of platform. And I thought, okay. But I discovered people that would do music, people that I listened to that were not mainstream musicians, but, people that would make their own music and do their originals. And like people were doing uh, mini concerts for a certain window of time. They had a following. And they were like saying, yeah, I'm saving up money to, if they were in college for my tuition, whatever. And they would make money this way. And I was intrigued by that whole concept of having a channel to do something like that. In the process of that, I found this one person who was doing beats. You're doing samples of songs and creating some content. And you'll find stuff like that on YouTube or other types of apps that do only like music beds, background music. People will create these little ditties, maybe for a minute and a half to 3 minutes long, and they sell it to these distributors, and the distributors then say, hey, if you want to subscribe to me, then I'll sell you my library and you can use that. It's licensed and you can use it in your videos, blah, 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 that type of thing. In the process of that, I found a guy by the name of Chris Punsalan. And Chris made his own beats, made his own music. And I kind of like started dipping into different places. And I noticed that he was on Instagram, and I followed him there. But then it was weird because at one point, all of a sudden, I noticed he was doing something else. And in that something else was caregiving. And I'm like, huh, well, this is different. This kid, because he's considerably younger than I am, is doing caregiving videos of him and his grandmother. So I started following him through Instagram, and I went to YouTube, and I never really paid attention to YouTube. It was never my thing. My best friends would always say, hey, yeah, we don't even watch mainstream media. We don't even watch any TV. We just watch YouTube videos. And I laughed because I'm like, all right. Again, I was in my own world. My dad would watch a lot of YouTube videos. Turned out that they were all watching the same food, Indonesian food channels of this guy that traveled to different parts of the Southeast Asia and would try different foods and all that stuff. And I thought, okay, so my dad kind of reintroduced me to YouTube. And I found Chris Punsalan at, in these YouTube videos as well, but it was all about caregiving and how he was taking care of his, I want to say 89, 90-year-old grandmother. And he was young. Number one, that intrigued me. What's a young person doing taking care of his grandmother? But then I thought, well, of course, it's his grandmother, right? But I didn't have any background on it. But then I thought, well, that's odd. I very rarely see a, a male caregiver. I always saw female. I always saw like daughters or wives or whatever. But it, that so that whole concept just it didn't it didn't sit with me that here's a young guy who has his whole life ahead of him, and I believe, boy, 5 years. God, I don't know. He was in his 20s. I thought that was different, and so it was intriguing. But what I learned about this gentleman is that his choice to be a caregiver and then learning the backstory of it, I thought, oh my gosh, I identify with this guy. He's Filipino. He was raised in a large Filipino family. And it resonated with me being Dutch Indonesian. And I said, I kind of understand where he's coming from. Not only that, growing up from my 12th year on, I was always involved in my extended family, my second family, which was Hawaiian Chinese. And my sister ended up marrying into that family. So we all became family, if you will. And it was just a whole dichotomy of relationships and family and support and all that all resonated with me. In the process of watching him on his videos and getting to know him through his videos and his caregiving tactics and how he does it and why he does that, not only resonated with me, but then I started to notice he started to do another channel. And this channel was called Family Mart Podcast. It's him and his cousins, three of his other cousins, would sit around and basically shoot the shit and talk about any type of thing. And it was funny because the things they would laugh at or the things they would talk about reminded me of the times that my family or my cousins or my extended family would have family gatherings, and we would sit around and just talk about stuff and make each other laugh, and that camaraderie of a family. And it just it resonated. So I was intrigued with that. And I remember writing Chris saying, thank God I see you doing something other than just caregiving, that you have an outlet. I saw less and less about his music production, which got me interested in that, in following him. But then it intrigued me and pulled me in with the caregiving because that was a relatable to me. And then seeing that he was doing other things with his cousins. And one thing that my best friend and I were always saying when we were growing up, her family's so big, there's 11 of them. And it's a huge family. And she was number 10. And my sister married number 11. But I remember having conversations growing up like, am I your only friend? What's the deal? And that's not true. I wasn't her only friend. But you realize when you're in a close-knit community of relatives, you almost don't need friends because they become your friends. And your cousins are your outlet, right? You have a million cousins. Everybody's a cousin. Everybody's an auntie. Everybody's an uncle, that type of thing. And it was really interesting because they had the same type of dynamic. And so that appealed to me as well. And they would talk about silly stuff, things that they would dare each other. Food played a huge role. I was totally into that. But I was also still following Chris and thinking, how does this guy do it? He's young. He shows videos of him working out. He shows himself, being a full-time caregiver for his grandmother. He does a podcast with his cousins. How does this guy do it? And over the years, I've followed him and where he's come to. And up until the point where his grandmother passed away last year, you find yourself invested in that relationship. You find yourself connecting so deeply and watching this gentleman go through his journey, and to know that whatever he decided to do in this journey, it took off like a rocket. And he talks about it in some of his videos, how he went viral. And He does little snippet videos. I don't believe I don't remember him doing any long form uh videos. They were fairly short, but they were enough. And I remember one of the first ones that I watched him, he oh he'd show how he would lift his grandmother out of the wheelchair and how he would bring her to the bed, or how he would start his day, brush her teeth, help her when she needed to go to the restroom, um, using the commode. I mean, all these things I was learning because I was actually learning as I was going along with my mom. And even to the point was like, okay, dude, I could be your mom, but I can't lift my mom, the way you can lift your grandmother. And you're considerably better fit and you can do all these things. And I'm watching you, but you're always saying, remember, lift with your legs, not with your back, lift with your legs. And the times from that point forward that I had to deal with my mom on a physical basis, I was using my legs, but my legs were not as strong. Oh no, it was not happening for me the way you made it look easy. Difference is that you were disciplined. You still worked out. You still went out and did certain things. And then come to learn is that you stepped up to the plate to be your grandmother's caregiver at 19. Even at the end of your college years, you stepped up to be her full-time caregiver when all your friends and family members were all doing all the other things that people in their 20s would do. If I understand right, you took care of your grandmother for 8, 9 years. I only took care of my mom for 3.5. And I remember how I felt in my 50s. I'm now in my 60s, but you're right, man. He was the first one that said it's isolating. It's debilitating strenuously. You have to stay on a regimen. You have to do this. You have to do that. And I remember writing him. He answered me back, which is great about YouTube. I said, you know what? You're absolutely right, Chris. It is isolating. I said, but the great thing about this particular time in your life where you're making videos of other caregivers, it actually lets me know that I'm not alone. And people in the caregiving community need that. And I thank you. And I remember, if I recall right, that particular comment hit a few hundred people. I don't know how far it went, but a lot of people resonated with that. And I also remember saying to him, I said, you know what? It's the culture we come from, the culture that we take care of our own. There's never a thought to put my mom into a rest home or a caregiving home. If there was any way possible, it's what we do. And I know that about the Filipino community. I know that about the Hawaiian community as well. For my Indonesian family, I know that too. It was never a thought. The difference is I come from a small family. And I was set apart to do this. I didn't want to do it. It just like what Chris said, it just made sense that he would be the person to do it. Granted, he had the support of his parents and some of his siblings, some of his cousins when they needed to. They would have an arrangement that Chris would take care of his grandmother. I think it was Monday through Friday. And on Saturday, on the weekends, his auntie would take over. And so that for the weekend, and then he would have a respite time. And then it would start all over again Monday through Friday. I didn't have that. I didn't have that luxury. But still, he laid out his method of dealing with this. He's the one that that laid it out to let me know I'm not alone. Other people are going to understand what it is that I'm going through, and even down to the caregiving supplies. He would end up getting sponsors because his videos went viral, and I didn't know about Carewell. Carewell is a company that does supplies. I had Shield, and they were who my mom was interactive with her insurance. So Shield healthcare products, they helped me, and just little things. But the dude is smart because he figured out how to contact these companies and utilize it so that he would have some sort of sponsorship and make it work for him. Youth and the method in which they work was his advantage, because I was just like dipping my big toe into it. He's got nearly, present day, 2 million followers. Yet I remember him when he was just getting started, and it was like instant. It was like a rocket. It took off. And, who knows? But one of these days, I would hope that I get to talk to him, have it on video, and just kind of thank him in person. But in the meantime, I'm just like, when people do this, what he did caused me to search the internet, which then led me to find Dementia Careblazers. And Dementia Careblazers ended up becoming my place of refuge, my place of learning, my place of support. A lot of people don't understand why it's so important to me, but honestly, I think if it wasn't for them and a place for resources, a place to grow and to learn, a place that I could feel safe, that people are going to meet me where I'm at and understand what I'm going through, I don't know where I'd be. It led me to Teepa Snow. It led me to Megan Devine. It led me to all these different people. It led me to Hospice Nurse Julie when I needed it. There's a clip that I'm going to share with you that Chris talks about when his grandmother finally passed away and what it felt like. He addresses a thing that I've learned through Dementia Careblazers was anticipatory grief. We kind of grazed over it in other videos, but you know what? There is something significant about that. And it really, he puts it in a great perspective of what it's like to experience something like that. Because when my mom was on her last day, and I didn't know it was her last day, but I knew it was close. I wasn't there when she took her last breath. My sister was there and my niece. But I remember 2 days before mom passed, I kept saying to myself, are you going to be okay if you're not there and mom transitions to heaven? And I found myself saying yes. And with a confident yes, a peaceful yes, because I knew that I gave everything that I could possibly give to mom. I knew that I did my very best, that I was capable of doing. I knew that she and I had said what needed to be said. And sure enough, when I went to lunch with my friend Kelly, I got the phone call. Hey, I think mom's gone. And I raced home. I was only, 10, 20 minutes away. And I raced home. I raced home to my mom, knowing that there's a small window that they could still hear after they take their last breath. And I ran to mom's room. Not to say, oh my God, I've missed out. Not to say that. As I wanted to make that window, that 30-minute window after they take their last breath, so that she could hear my voice and I could say what I wanted to say. To say, I love you. And I'm going to miss you terribly. I want you to know I'm going to be okay. I just wanted that moment. I would have felt worse if I didn't have that moment because I knew that's what I wanted. I'm glad it was my sister and my niece that spent the last moments of her life. Everybody needs to do what they need to do. And I just kind of found myself slowly backing off that week. I was slowly backing off. And it's a strange feeling when you spend 24/7 with your loved one. Here's that video.
One day you wake up and you realize the person that you spent every day with is no longer here. Just like that. And I learned something when I went to New York. I learned something from Adrienne. She talked about anticipatory grief. And she was saying that it's something that a lot of caregivers go through because, you see every stage of the decline for the person that you're taking care of. You see them when they experience this and you grieve that part because they're no longer who they used to be. And then you grieve another part when they, go through another thing and then another thing and then another thing until ultimately the person that you're caring for is no longer here. So it makes sense to me why I wasn't as sad as I thought I would be. I wasn't as sad as I envisioned myself to be when I thought about this moment of grandma passing. I wasn't at the funeral sobbing. I wasn't, I've had my fair share of crying moments and breakdowns, but for the most part, I feel more relief than sadness. I feel relief for grandma. I feel relief for myself, for my mom, for everybody who was involved during this process. I just feel relief for everyone.
And I am relieved. I'm relieved for myself. I'm relieved for everybody else that stepped in. I'm relieved that mom is set free. That when I prayed that she be healed and whole, of course, my prayer was healed and whole, period. Yeah, I knew it wasn't realistic to say, God, please heal her, make her whole, restore her health here on earth. I knew that wasn't right. I knew it wasn't realistic. But if you, according to your words, say that you can make her healed, whole, restored to her best in heaven, yeah, that's what I want. And that's where I can find peace. So I leave this with you. Remember to always, always be good to yourself and continue to be blessed. Take care.